It's a very complicated question. Obviously, if he is fired, it could look like it is a part of the obstruction of justice that continues, since he is the one supervising the Mueller investigation. And it could look exactly like the Saturday Night Massacre taking place over a protracted period of time. I think that organizations like Move On and Indivisible are prepared to take to the streets if Rosenstein is fired. If he resigns, I would hope that won't happen, because we really need him to stay to keep oversight of the investigation, which he has allowed to proceed in a reasonable fashion, and we don't know who would ultimately take over that position and whether that would interfere further with the Mueller investigation, or whether this is even just a step toward getting rid of Mueller.
Given your experience during Watergate, do you see parallels between the way things are progressing now and what you saw back then?
Yes, I think what we're seeing now is a lot more played out in public, partly because the president tweets all the time or goes on Fox News and says what he is actually thinking, which we didn't always have access to during the Watergate era. So there are so many similarities, but the obstruction this time seems to be taking place much more in plain sight. We don't have to wait for the tape recordings that we had to wait for in Watergate. We have the president tweeting things that look like obstruction. And this also looks like a diversion from the Kavanaugh hearings that are taking place on Thursday. And the investigation that's being urged now on the second accuser of Kavanaugh, by having all the news today diverted to the discussion of whether Rosenstein will be fired or resign, or whether he's just clearing the air and saying, I didn't say any of the things that were reported in the New York Times.
Well, the precipitating item here is that New York Times article from Friday, which Mr. Rosenstein has said was, quote, incorrect and factually inaccurate. Okay, that's one thing. And then he said, I have seen no reason in my personal dealings with the president to invoke the 25th Amendment, which is the process by which the sitting cabinet members can remove a president for being incapable of carrying out the duties of office. He says incorrect and factually inaccurate. But tell me, as you listen to that, does that sound like he is denying fully the report in the New York Times that talks about him saying, somebody ought to wear a wire and go in and do that? Is he fully denying that he had conversations at which invoking the 25th Amendment was discussed? And if those conversations did take place, should he be a member of the president's administration?
Well, it's very hard to tell exactly what was said, if anything. It's hard for me to envision him ever discussing the 25th Amendment for several reasons. Not only because he's now saying there's no reason for him to suspect that the president should be removed by the 25th Amendment, but because he was talking to his subordinates. And I cannot imagine a non-cabinet officer who has no right to weigh in on whether the 25th Amendment should be invoked or not, talking to his subordinates about the possibility. So that part of the statement that was reported in the New York Times does seem to me really hard to accept. The comment that is alleged about him saying something about maybe I should wear a wire also seems incredible, because I can't imagine a man who has devoted so much time to protecting justice would even consider doing something like that. And he doesn't have that many meetings with the president, so it would also be an ineffective and meaningless thing. So both of those seem hard to believe.